Charleston, West Virginia, 1994. The city hummed with the slow, steady rhythm of Appalachian life, a place where everyone knew everyone, or at least, knew of them. But that year, an unsettling silence fell over the bustling newsroom of the Charleston Gazette, a silence that reverberated through the entire community. Amanda Price, a tenacious investigative journalist, had vanished without a trace, leaving behind a chilling void and a mountain of unanswered questions that would haunt the town for decades. Her sudden disappearance was not just a local tragedy, it felt like a violation, a tear in the fabric of their quiet existence. Amanda wasn't just any journalist, she was a force of nature, a crusader for truth in a world often content with convenient fictions. Known for her unwavering dedication and sharp intellect, she had carved a reputation at the Gazette as the reporter who dug deeper, who asked the uncomfortable questions, and who never let a story rest until every stone was overturned. Her moral compass was unshakable, always pointing towards justice, towards giving a voice to the voiceless. Charleston was her home, and she felt a profound responsibility to its people. Her current obsession, the one that consumed her days and nights, was the Charleston Benevolent Fund. On the surface, the fund was a pillar of the community, lauded for its extensive outreach programs and its commitment to helping the less fortunate. Yet, beneath this glossy exterior, whispers had begun to circulate, hushed rumors of financial irregularities, of funds diverted, of an opaqueness that contradicted its very name. Amanda, with her keen journalistic instincts, had sensed a rotten core, and she was determined to expose it. She believed in the power of information, that sunlight was the best disinfectant, and she was ready to shine a spotlight on the truth. The atmosphere in the newsroom before her disappearance had been electric. Amanda was on the precipice of breaking a truly monumental story, one that promised to shake the foundations of Charleston's charitable elite. Colleagues remembered her saying she was on to something big, her eyes sparkling with a mix of excitement and fierce determination. She had meticulously gathered evidence, piecing together a complex puzzle of financial records, interviews, and confidential sources. The final draft of her explosive article, the culmination of months of tireless work, was due to be submitted. Then it vanished, along with Amanda herself. Her office, usually a whirlwind of organized chaos, stood eerily still. The manuscript, the very heart of her investigation, was mysteriously absent from her desk. Her abrupt, unexplained absence threw the entire newsroom into a desperate frenzy, a palpable sense of dread settling over them all. The initial alarm quickly escalated into a full-blown panic. Police launched an immediate investigation, their efforts focused on Amanda's last known movements. They meticulously reconstructed her final hours, tracing her path from the Gazette office to her small apartment. There were no signs of forced entry at either location, no shattered windows, no overturned furniture, no evidence of a struggle. It was as if she had simply walked away, an impossibility for such a dedicated, methodical woman. Her car, a modest sedan, was discovered abandoned near a local park on the city's outskirts, seemingly undisturbed. The initial leads were frustratingly cold, perplexing seasoned authorities who were used to seeing at least some tangible clue. It was a blank slate, a mystery that defied conventional explanation, leaving investigators with more questions than answers. The case of Amanda Price became a chilling enigma, a hole in the heart of Charleston. Before we delve deeper into this perplexing cold case, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell. Doing so ensures you won't miss out on future deep dives into other unsolved mysteries and compelling true crime stories. Your support helps us continue bringing these important narratives to light. The initial alarm quickly escalated into a full-blown panic. The missing persons case, initially handled with standard protocols, rapidly transformed into a full-scale, urgent investigation, its gravity palpable throughout the Charleston Police Department. Every available officer was mobilized, and the search for Amanda Price swiftly became the city's top priority. Public appeals were broadcast repeatedly on local television and radio stations, her smiling, determined face plastered on flyers distributed by volunteers and police officers alike, appearing on every lamppost and storefront in Charleston. Local news outlets, driven by the personal connection many reporters felt to their missing colleague, diligently kept the story alive, highlighting Amanda's unwavering commitment to justice and her fearless pursuit of truth. They turned her disappearance into a daily front-page headline, reminding everyone that a vital voice had been silenced, and that the community owed it to her to find answers. With Amanda's journalistic focus firmly established on the Charleston Benevolent Fund, investigators naturally turned their attention to the charity she had been so meticulously scrutinizing. The police department initiated a comprehensive inquiry into the organization's operations, its financial dealings, and its leadership. At the helm of the Charleston Benevolent Fund was Robert Maxwell, a figure widely regarded as a pillar of the community. Maxwell was a man of impeccable reputation, known for his philanthropic endeavors and his charismatic presence. When approached by detectives, he expressed profound shock and sadness regarding Amanda's disappearance, offering his full and unconditional cooperation to the authorities. He presented himself as a victim of circumstance, distraught that his organization was inadvertently caught in the crossfire of a tragic event. However, beneath Maxwell's composed exterior and the charity's pristine public image, detectives began to uncover initial discrepancies in the Charleston Benevolent Fund's sprawling financial records. What started as routine auditing checks quickly revealed a series of small, unsettling inconsistencies. These weren't grand, obvious acts of fraud, but rather subtle anomalies, unreceipted expenditures, vague entries for substantial sums, and a curious lack of detailed documentation for certain large grants. Each individual discrepancy, in isolation, might have been dismissed as an administrative oversight. But when pieced together, they began to paint a disquieting picture of potential mismanagement, strongly suggesting that Amanda's suspicions were not unfounded. The trail of these minor inconsistencies, like breadcrumbs, started to lead investigators down a path Amanda herself had been charting. As the investigation into the charity deepened, detectives encountered another concerning pattern: a surprising degree of evasiveness from several lower-level employees when questioned about Amanda's interactions with them. These were individuals who, given their positions, would likely have had some contact or knowledge of Amanda's inquiries. Yet their responses were hesitant, often contradictory, and universally claimed complete ignorance about the specifics of her investigation into the fund. They spoke in vague generalities, avoiding direct answers, and seemed visibly uncomfortable discussing Amanda or her work. This collective reluctance to speak openly, combined with their claims of knowing nothing about a prominent journalist asking detailed questions within their organization, raised a significant red flag for the seasoned investigators. Their uncooperative demeanor hinted at a deeper layer of secrets, possibly a concerted effort to conceal information. Meanwhile, Amanda's distraught family made a heartfelt, tearful plea to the public for any information, no matter how small, that might lead to her whereabouts. Her father, his voice cracking with emotion, spoke of Amanda's unwavering character, her passion for justice, and the vital, courageous work she was doing. Her mother, her eyes red-rimmed and filled with anguish, reiterated their firm belief that Amanda's disappearance was not a random act, but was directly and tragically linked to her reporting on the Charleston Benevolent Fund. Their plea resonated deeply within the community, solidifying the public perception that Amanda had stumbled upon something truly dangerous, something someone desperately wanted to keep hidden. Their pain was a stark reminder of the human cost of her disappearance, transforming a distant news story into a deeply personal tragedy for everyone watching. Despite extensive efforts, the initial investigation stalled, slowly grinding to a disheartening halt. The sheer lack of a body, combined with the absence of any concrete evidence pointing to foul play or a definitive crime scene, became an insurmountable obstacle for the police. Without these crucial elements, the case eventually went cold, a decision that ripped through Amanda's family and shattered the hopes of her colleagues at the Gazette. Charleston, a city accustomed to its quiet rhythms, slowly began to move on, but the lingering mystery of Amanda's fate remained, a persistent phantom at the edges of its conscience. Her story became a hushed conversation, a cautionary tale whispered among journalists, and a painful wound for those who loved her. Lingering questions continued to plague everyone involved, stubbornly refusing to fade with time. Who was Amanda meeting with in those final days, the sources that had fueled her relentless pursuit of truth? What specific, damning information had she managed to uncover that was so vital, so threatening, that it could lead to her disappearance? And why, precisely, were the Charleston Benevolent Fund's financials so frustratingly opaque, riddled with minor inconsistencies that collectively suggested something far more sinister? The police, while acknowledging the undeniable connection between Amanda's investigation and her vanishing, were left without the definitive proof needed to move forward. Suspicions were plentiful, but tangible evidence was tragically scarce, leaving them at a standstill. Throughout this period, Robert Maxwell, the polished director of the Charleston Benevolent Fund, continued to perform his civic duties, maintaining his public image as a benevolent community leader without so much as a flicker of outward concern. He attended charitable galas, spoke eloquently at public events, and continued to manage the fund's affairs, albeit now under a cloud of unspoken public scrutiny. Any suspicion against him, fueled by the circumstantial links to Amanda's investigation, remained purely speculative in the public eye. There was no direct evidence, no smoking gun, and Maxwell skillfully navigated the situation, projecting an aura of innocent distress and cooperation. He successfully deflected the quiet murmurs, always portraying himself as a victim of unfortunate circumstances rather than a potential perpetrator. Years inevitably turned into decades, each one deepening the mystery and the collective sorrow surrounding Amanda Price. The case transformed from a current event into a haunting local legend, a stark and chilling reminder of unchecked power, the vulnerability of those who seek the truth, and a journalist's unanswered call for justice. Amanda's story, though unsolved, continued to resonate, becoming almost mythical. New generations of aspiring journalists, armed with idealism and a desire to make a difference, were often inspired by her courage and her tragic fate. Her portrait hung in the Gazette newsroom, a silent sentinel, a constant reminder of the risks and the profound importance of their profession. Charleston remembered, even as it moved forward, that a piece of its heart had gone missing with Amanda. Through all the passing years, Amanda's family, particularly her younger brother, Michael, refused to surrender to despair. He became the steadfast guardian of her memory, an unwavering beacon of hope in the deepening gloom of the cold case. Michael dedicated a significant portion of his adult life to keeping her story alive, his grief transmuted into a quiet, relentless determination. He spent countless hours poring over the original case files, yellowed documents and grainy photographs, searching for any overlooked detail, any missed clue, anything that might reignite the investigation. He corresponded with cold case detectives, wrote letters to the editor, and spoke at community events, his voice steady despite the pain, always lobbying for renewed attention to his sister's disappearance. Michael believed, with every fiber of his being, that Amanda deserved answers, and he felt a profound responsibility to be her advocate, her voice when hers had been so cruelly silenced. He was a man consumed by a singular purpose: to find justice for his beloved sister, no matter how long it took. His unwavering persistence was a testament to his love, a quiet force against the relentless march of time. His unwavering persistence was a testament to his love, a quiet force against the relentless march of time, and finally, after 2 agonizing decades, that persistence would be rewarded. A significant shift began to ripple through the Charleston Police Department. 2 decades after Amanda Price vanished, a new cold case unit was formally established, bringing fresh eyes and renewed determination to the mysteries that had long haunted the city. Among the dusty, voluminous files meticulously arrayed on the shelves, Amanda Price's case was among the very first to be reopened, its significance and the public's enduring memory making it a priority. At the helm of this revitalized investigation was Detective Emily Carter, a sharp, analytical, and intensely determined young investigator. Carter possessed a rare blend of intellectual curiosity and an unwavering commitment to justice, traits that made her perfectly suited to unraveling the intricate threads of such an old, challenging case. She understood the weight of expectation, not just from the department, but from Amanda's family, who had waited so long for answers. Detective Carter began her daunting task by meticulously reviewing every single piece of original evidence from 1994. She spent countless hours poring over police reports, reading and rereading every word of witness statements, and scrutinizing the limited forensic findings available from the initial investigation. Her approach was methodical and unhurried. She wasn't looking for grand new revelations immediately. Rather, she was searching for the subtle details, the seemingly insignificant anomalies that might have been overlooked in the initial rush and chaos of a high-profile missing persons case. Sometimes, in the sheer volume of information, small but crucial discrepancies can be missed, or certain observations not fully appreciated. Until years later, when biases and assumptions have faded, Carter brought to the file a fresh perspective, untainted by the initial frustrations and dead ends. Moreover, Emily Carter recognized the profound advantage of the digital age in which she operated, a technological landscape vastly different from 1994. With advancements in data recovery and forensic computing, she explored avenues that simply didn't exist 2 decades prior. She initiated efforts to recover data from old computers and digital devices that had belonged to Amanda, as well as those connected to the Charleston Benevolent Fund. These devices, deemed thoroughly examined at the time, held a potential treasure trove of information. Old hard drives, floppy disks, and early digital recorders could potentially contain deleted files, communication logs, or encrypted documents that were beyond the technological capabilities of the original investigators. Her hope was that some digital ghost of Amanda's final work might still reside within these archaic machines, waiting to be unearthed. The breakthrough, when it finally arrived, was both unexpected and profoundly significant, a testament to the new unit's dedication and the power of persistent inquiry. A crucial turning point materialized in the form of an anonymous tip. It wasn't a phone call, not a handwritten note, but an encrypted email, sent from a secure, untraceable address. The message itself was brief, almost cryptic, but its content was electrifying. It pointed directly to a former low-level employee of the Charleston Benevolent Fund, a man named David Miller. The tip claimed Miller had mysteriously and abruptly left Charleston shortly after Amanda's disappearance, essentially vanishing without a trace himself. This detail, initially dismissed as a minor employee turnover in 1994, now took on an entirely new, sinister connotation. Detective Carter immediately shifted her focus to David Miller. She began to painstakingly research his past, digging into public records, old employment files, and any available databases. What she uncovered was a man with a history of minor financial fraud, small-time scams and petty embezzlement, predating his employment at the charity. It wasn't a pristine record, indicating a propensity for dishonesty. However, after 1994, David Miller had effectively disappeared from all conventional records, a digital shadow, making him incredibly difficult to trace. It was as if he had deliberately erased himself from existence, reinforcing the anonymous tip's suggestion that his sudden departure was far more suspicious than previously assumed. Carter knew this was her lead, the thread that could finally unravel the long-dormant mystery. Detective Carter's meticulous work and the anonymous tip finally converged, allowing her to pinpoint David Miller's location. After weeks of painstaking digital forensics and cross-referencing obscure databases, she successfully tracked him down to a small, remote town nestled deep in the Appalachian Mountains, far removed from the bustling life of Charleston. He was living under an assumed name, leading a life of self-imposed exile, seemingly haunted by his past. His once vibrant appearance had faded, replaced by a gaunt figure, eyes that constantly darted, and a demeanor etched with perpetual anxiety. It was clear that the intervening years had not brought him peace. Instead, they had burdened him with an invisible weight. The quiet, almost reclusive existence he now maintained was a stark contrast to the life he had once led in Charleston, suggesting a desperate attempt to outrun his own history. Miller was brought in for questioning, not in the intimidating environment of a police interrogation room in Charleston, but in a neutral, nondescript office in a nearby county, a strategic choice by Carter to minimize his immediate defensiveness. Initially, he was exactly as expected, evasive, offering short, clipped answers, and denying any substantial knowledge of Amanda Price or the circumstances surrounding her disappearance. He claimed to have simply moved away for a fresh start, tired of city life. His eyes, though, betrayed his words, flickering with deep-seated fear and an unmistakable tension. Detective Carter, however, was patient. She didn't press aggressively. Instead, she employed a persistent yet empathetic approach, speaking softly, reminding him that after 20 years, the truth had a way of surfacing, and that this was his chance to unburden himself. She focused on the psychological toll of carrying such a secret, slowly, carefully, cracking his carefully constructed facade. She appealed to any lingering sense of morality, any vestige of conscience that might remain within him. Bit by bit, the carefully constructed walls around David Miller began to crumble. He eventually confessed his involvement, not as the primary perpetrator of Amanda's disappearance, but as an accessory after the fact, a terrified pawn in a much darker game. The words came out haltingly at first, then in a torrent, punctuated by shudders and heavy sighs. The mastermind, he revealed, was none other than Robert Maxwell, the revered director of the Charleston Benevolent Fund, the man who had effortlessly maintained his benevolent public image for 2 decades. Miller detailed how Maxwell had orchestrated an elaborate embezzlement scheme, systematically siphoning vast sums of money from the charity, all while maintaining the veneer of a selfless community leader. The details were sickeningly precise, painting a picture of calculated greed and profound hypocrisy. Miller's confession unraveled the layers of Maxwell's deception. He explained that Amanda Price was indeed very close, dangerously close, to exposing Maxwell's intricate web of financial fraud. Her tenacious investigation had pieced together irrefutable evidence that would not only ruin Maxwell's reputation but also land him in prison for a very long time. Maxwell, desperate to protect his carefully curated image, his lavish lifestyle, and the power he wielded in the community, had confronted Amanda. He saw her not as a journalist seeking truth, but as an existential threat to everything he had meticulously built on a foundation of lies. The confrontation, Miller recounted, was born out of Maxwell's panic and fury at being cornered by a relentless reporter. Miller, his voice barely a whisper, recounted the horrifying details of that fateful confrontation. It had taken place not in some dark alley, but in a seemingly innocuous, secluded location, a small, remote lodge owned by a shell corporation Maxwell secretly controlled, far from prying eyes. Maxwell had arranged to meet Amanda there under the guise of an exclusive interview, promising to finally address her persistent questions about the charity's finances. He hadn't intended to silence her permanently, not at first. His initial plan was to buy Amanda's silence, to offer her a substantial sum of money, a bribe large enough to make her drop the story and disappear. But Amanda, the principal journalist, had vehemently refused. Her journalistic integrity was unwavering, a moral wall against Maxwell's desperate offer. She had looked him dead in the eye, Miller recalled, and told him she wouldn't compromise, that the truth would out. It was at that moment, when his last-ditch effort failed, that Maxwell's panic escalated into uncontrollable rage. It was at that moment, when his last-ditch effort failed, that Maxwell's panic escalated into uncontrollable rage, transforming him from a suave, philanthropic leader into a desperate, cornered animal. Miller, still visibly shaking as he recounted the memory, described how Maxwell, in a sudden, violent fit of fury, had attacked Amanda. It wasn't a planned, premeditated murder, but a spontaneous, horrific act driven by a primal need to silence her and protect his crumbling empire of lies. He had struck her, then more blows followed, each one fueled by adrenaline and the terrifying realization that his carefully constructed world was about to collapse. The confrontation quickly turned into a struggle for Amanda's life, a struggle she ultimately lost. The silence that fell after the brutal act was profound, broken only by Maxwell's ragged breathing and Miller's own terrified gasps. The journalist, who had sought only truth, lay dead, a casualty of unbridled greed and a moment of unfathomable desperation. Then came the chilling task of the cover-up. Miller, overwhelmed by fear and the sheer horror of what he had just witnessed, found himself coerced by a now calm, calculating Maxwell. Maxwell, with a chilling composure that belied his recent outburst, promised Miller a significant sum of money, a life of wealth and anonymity, if he helped dispose of Amanda's body and meticulously erase all traces of their crime. But the promise was quickly followed by a dark threat. If Miller refused, his own family, his loved ones, would suffer dire consequences. Trapped between a rock and a hard place, complicit in a horrific deed, Miller succumbed to Maxwell's manipulative power. He helped Maxwell load Amanda's body into a vehicle, the weight of her lifeless form a constant, haunting presence in his memory. They worked swiftly, methodically, erasing fingerprints, cleaning the lodge, and making it appear as though no one had ever been there. The next grim step was the disposal. Miller, under Maxwell's chilling direction, provided the exact location where Amanda's remains were to be buried. It was a remote, overgrown area, a hidden pocket deep within the vast expanse of a national forest bordering West Virginia, a place known only to a few locals who hunted or hiked its most secluded trails. Maxwell, familiar with the land from childhood hunting trips, knew it offered the perfect, out-of-the-way spot, a natural grave that would hopefully remain undisturbed for eternity. Together they dug, the silence of the forest broken only by the rhythmic thud of shovels hitting earth and the desperate thumping of Miller's own heart, pounding out a rhythm of regret and fear. They covered the makeshift grave with brush and leaves, doing their best to return the forest floor to its natural state, hoping to bury not just a body, but a truth that would never see the light of day. For 20 years, that secret held firm. Armed with Miller's incredibly detailed confession, which included precise geographical coordinates and specific landmarks within the dense forest, Detective Carter immediately dispatched a specialized search team. The painstaking operation began, focused on the exact patch of earth Miller had described, a place he hadn't visited in 2 decades but remembered with crystal clarity. After an arduous search, navigating the thick undergrowth and uneven terrain of the national forest, the breakthrough finally came. Amanda Price's skeletal remains were unearthed, a heartbreaking but crucial piece of closure to the 2-decade-old mystery. The discovery brought both profound sadness and immense relief. Forensic analysis swiftly and conclusively confirmed her identity, providing irrefutable evidence that the long-lost journalist had finally been found. The news rippled through the cold case unit, then through the department, and finally beyond. The revelation of Amanda's discovery and the identity of her murderer sent shockwaves through Charleston. The city, which had honored Robert Maxwell for so long, was utterly stunned. The revered community leader, the benevolent figure who had graced countless charity galas and community events, was now stripped of his carefully constructed facade. He became, almost overnight, the prime suspect in a brutal murder and a massive, extensive financial fraud. The betrayal was deeply felt, shaking the community's trust in its most esteemed figures. People struggled to reconcile the image of the selfless philanthropist with the monstrous killer Miller's confession had painted. The name Robert Maxwell, once synonymous with generosity and public service, was now irrevocably tainted, forever linked to deceit, violence, and the chilling silence of Amanda Price. The city braced itself for the seismic fallout, knowing that justice, though delayed, was finally on its way. The city braced itself for the seismic fallout, knowing that justice, though delayed, was finally on its way. The evidence, painstakingly gathered over 2 decades, culminated in the swift arrest of Robert Maxwell. The news of his apprehension reverberated through Charleston, stunning a community that had long held him in the highest regard. The man who had been a symbol of philanthropic benevolence, a trusted leader, was now exposed as a murderer and a thief. The betrayal was profound, shaking the very foundations of public trust and forcing many to reevaluate their perceptions of power and morality. Disbelief mingled with anger, and a sense of collective grief for Amanda Price, whose truth had finally come to light. The mask of respectability had been torn away, revealing the chilling depravity beneath, leaving an indelible scar on the city's conscience. The trial of Robert Maxwell quickly escalated into a national sensation. News crews descended upon Charleston, eager to cover the dramatic unraveling of a respected pillar of society. The courtroom became a crucible where 2 decades of lies and secrets were meticulously laid bare. Prosecutors, led by a formidable legal team, presented an overwhelming case. David Miller's detailed testimony, the cornerstone of their prosecution, provided a chilling eyewitness account of Amanda's murder and the subsequent cover-up. His words painted a vivid, horrifying picture of Maxwell's rage and desperation. This was meticulously corroborated by the forensic evidence from the remote burial site, which definitively linked Amanda's remains to the secluded forest spot Miller had identified. Further bolstering their case were Amanda's recovered notes, the very documents that had cost her life, detailing the intricate web of the charity's financial fraud. These papers, once missing, now served as her silent, powerful voice, speaking from beyond the grave. Maxwell, however, steadfastly maintained his innocence, deploying a well-funded and aggressive defense strategy. His legal team vehemently attacked David Miller's credibility, portraying him as a disgruntled, unreliable, and self-serving employee who was fabricating a story to save himself from a harsher sentence. They argued that Miller, with his own history of financial impropriety, was the true villain, attempting to pin his own crimes on an innocent man. They also tried to discredit Amanda Price herself, subtly suggesting that her disappearance might have been a voluntary act, perhaps driven by personal issues or journalistic ambition, implying she had simply chosen to vanish, thereby attempting to absolve Maxwell of any wrongdoing. They painted her as reckless and overly ambitious, insinuating that she had brought her fate upon herself. In a poignant and emotionally charged moment, Amanda's younger brother, Michael, took the stand. His testimony was not about legal intricacies or financial fraud. It was a deeply personal, heartbreaking victim impact statement. With a voice that trembled but held an unwavering resolve, Michael spoke of Amanda not just as a journalist, but as his beloved sister, a vibrant, principled woman who had dedicated her life to holding the powerful accountable. He painted a vivid picture of her infectious laugh, her unwavering conviction, and the immense, unbearable void her disappearance had left in their family. He spoke of the 2 decades of agonizing uncertainty, the hope that slowly faded into despair, and the profound injustice of her brutal murder. His words resonated deeply with the jury, lending a powerful human face to the cold, hard facts of the case and reminding everyone of the true cost of Maxwell's crimes. After weeks of intense testimony, cross-examination, and closing arguments, the jury deliberated. The courtroom was thick with tension, the air heavy with anticipation. Finally, the foreperson delivered the verdict. Guilty. Guilty on all counts, including the murder of Amanda Price and multiple counts of embezzlement. A collective gasp, followed by a mix of sobs and sighs of profound relief, erupted in the courtroom. For Amanda's family, it was a moment of bittersweet triumph. Justice, after 20 long years, had finally been served. Robert Maxwell, the once revered figure, stood exposed and condemned, his life of deception definitively over. The truth, once buried deep in the forest, had finally broken free. The courtroom erupted in a mix of grief and relief. Justice, after 20 long years, had finally been served. Robert Maxwell, the once revered figure, stood exposed and condemned, his life of deception definitively over. The truth, once buried deep in the forest, had finally broken free. The subsequent sentencing hearing brought a definitive end to Maxwell's reign of terror and deceit. Robert Maxwell was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, a just retribution for the murder of Amanda Price and the extensive financial crimes he had orchestrated. The judge's words were stern, reflecting the community's outrage and the heinous nature of his actions. He would spend the remainder of his days behind bars, stripped of his power, his wealth, and his carefully constructed public persona. David Miller, whose courage to finally speak the truth was instrumental in solving the cold case, received a significantly reduced sentence for his cooperation. While his role as an accessory to murder was undeniably grim, his testimony had been the key that unlocked the entire mystery. This decision sparked some public debate, with some arguing that his involvement warranted a harsher punishment, while others recognized the necessity of such deals in bringing powerful criminals to justice. Ultimately, the court acknowledged the invaluable contribution his confession made in revealing the truth, a truth that had eluded authorities for 2 decades. The revelation of Amanda's burial site and the details of Maxwell's crimes would likely have remained buried forever without Miller's decision to come forward. The aftermath of the trial brought about significant changes. The Charleston Benevolent Fund, now irreparably tainted by the scandal and revealed as a front for Maxwell's criminal enterprise, was dissolved. Its remaining assets, after a thorough forensic audit, were seized and meticulously used to compensate the victims of Maxwell's elaborate fraud, a small measure of recompense for the trust he had so callously abused. But from the ashes of deception, something positive emerged. In Amanda's honor, a new, transparent charity was established, dedicated to serving the community with integrity and accountability. Named the Amanda Price Legacy Fund, it was designed with robust oversight and strict financial regulations, ensuring that her legacy of truth and honesty lived on, a poignant testament to the very principles she died defending. Amanda Price's tragic case transcended mere headlines. It became a powerful, enduring reminder of the inherent dangers journalists face when fearlessly pursuing the truth. Her story underscored the profound importance of a free and uncompromised press, and the often unseen sacrifices made by those who dedicate their lives to uncovering uncomfortable realities. It also served as a beacon of hope, demonstrating that even the coldest cases, those seemingly lost to the annals of time and forgotten memories, can ultimately be solved with unwavering perseverance, dedicated detective work, and an unyielding commitment to justice. Her memory became a symbol, inspiring a new generation of investigative reporters to continue her fight, knowing the cost, but also valuing the indispensable role they play in a democratic society. For Michael, Amanda's brother, the verdict and sentencing brought a profound, albeit painful, measure of peace. While the gnawing loss of his sister would forever remain, the agonizing uncertainty of her fate had finally been lifted. Knowing what had happened, understanding the circumstances of her death, and witnessing justice being served against her killer brought a form of closure he had never truly believed possible. The weight of 2 decades of unanswered questions, of sleepless nights haunted by what-ifs, began to lift. He knew his sister's sacrifice had not been in vain, that her truth had finally triumphed. He could now mourn, not just for a missing person, but for a life brutally taken, and for a legacy bravely cemented. His tireless advocacy had played a crucial role, and in that, he found a quiet solace. Thank you for watching this compelling story of justice finally served, a testament to resilience and the enduring power of truth. If you found this outline insightful and Amanda's story impactful, please take a moment to like this video, share it with others who appreciate courageous journalism and true crime, and leave a comment below with your thoughts and reflections on this extraordinary case. Your engagement helps us bring these important narratives to a wider audience. And most importantly, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell so you don't miss out on more in-depth true crime and mystery outlines. We'll continue to delve into the shadows, bringing light to the forgotten, and ensuring that every story, no matter how old, finds its voice. We'll see you in the next one.